Good morning, my name is Ben. I'm a follower of Jesus. I would like to talk to you about Gerasenes. Gerasene is a word you may or may not have heard, as it's translated 3 or 4 different ways in terms of how it's spelled and pronounced in the Bible, and does not occur frequently. Gerasene is the demonym or regional term describing the demoniac called Legion in the Gospels. Now, we know that the disciples and Jesus have crossed a lake on a boat. Crossed a boat. That's a not very exciting thing to do. They've crossed a lake on a boat. And they've come to a place of the Gerasenes, depending on your translation, where they meet a man who is multi-demon possessed. And he says, I am Legion, for we are many. Legion implies that there was something like 1,000, or it could be an exaggeration, hyperbole. Nonetheless, he's multi-demon possessed. Now, number of things. He's a young man. They've attempted to, the Gerasenes themselves have attempted to shackle him, and he's broken chains. So he's a person of superhuman strength and pain tolerance. When they are cast out, they are cast into a herd of pigs. Why are there pigs in Israel? Why are there pigs in Israel? This is a very awkward question. Israel's a kosher country. There shouldn't be any pigs in the nation, let alone where they are right now. This is a place, I believe, that has dedicated itself to worship of false gods. And this young man is a casualty of the false god worship of his community, and probably of his parents. These people are so selfish that when he is finally freed of these demons, at the expense of a herd of pigs, the people are angry. They would rather see this man afflicted than lose some money. So there is idolatry of money, there is a number of things. But I believe God has shown me through the story of the Gerasene and the demoniac that there are people who are affected for the rest of their lives by the sins of others. Now, in particular, I want to be very clear. We are all responsible for our own behavior. We're all accountable for our own sin. However, there is an age before which we are not considered culpable for those things, unable to understand. Now, I believe that this group of people I'm describing, who I'm referring to now as Gerasenes, for lack of a better term, and a way to reference it in a biblical sense, are people who have been damaged by the sins of others when they were young. And so the Gerasene becomes they're also different. It's very hard to put them into a single category, and yet they all belong in this group. So consider with me someone who is a child who is living in an environment drenched with other people's sin. On one level, people that are trafficking with demons, that is, either people openly and clearly doing it by way of witchcraft, or by way of drug use. And that is expressed in the fact that the word for sorcery in the Greek, in the New Testament, is pharmakeia, which talks about the use of drugs to alter the consciousness, and you open your brain to demonic interaction, whether you know it or not. If you're a drug user, you are playing or letting yourself be played with by demonic entities. So that's whether marijuana ever becomes legal, it will still be something that opens the mind to demonic activity. So, and no, I do not use drugs. I used to drink coffee, but I used to take very strong allergy medicine too, but that's about the extent of it. People get affected spiritually by these things. See, in a just world, somebody that smokes doesn't smoke around the kids. If you're a smoker and you are, against their will, exposing your precious child to your tobacco smoke on your clothes, on your breath, on your skin. If you smoke around them or, give them any exposure whatsoever. Now, if that young boy or girl grows up to have lung cancer and never smoked a cigarette, whose sin are they bearing on themselves? They're bearing their parents' the marks of their parents' sin upon them. Now, I believe this happens spiritually as well. Parents that are trafficking with demons are associating demons with their children, getting them connected, and giving those demons the impression that they've got access to those children. You as a parent were always intended to be a spiritual and physical protector of your children, and you have the authority, every parent, to bind those influences from your children. Now, if what you do is the opposite, open the door wide open to them, that demon now has the impression that it's got free access to your children. Okay? And this is, there are warlocks in this area. I met the daughter of a warlock who was talking about their house being haunted, and what that really means, their house has got demons. And he is under the impression he's got control over them, which is the most hilarious thing I can imagine. Hilarious, disturbing, tragic thing. But this girl who's the daughter of this warlock is experiencing demonic attacks, experiencing hallucinations, experiencing voices, and of course, it's her father's fault. Had her father been her protector and not sort of letting the monsters play around with his kids, she wouldn't experience these things. So the parent has to remove the protection and often invite in these spiritual influences. And it creates an attachment of demonic things to a person before they ever had the ability to make a choice, before they ever had any say in the matter. And so the Gerasene is that person. See, the demonic influences of his parents, his community, rested and settled upon him. And as he began to act crazier, because in a sense all of their sin was on him, sort of resting upon him like a scapegoat, like a sin eater, they blamed him for his crazy behavior and drove him out of town, trying to chain him up. So, and there is another level to this Gerasene thing. It is also, so those things that is mentioned are lack of protection, spiritual access being given to demonic things. Now, these demonic things want you to hurt your children. They want you to hurt your children. You go back to the Old Testament, one of the false gods, which I believe to be a demonic entity taking advantage of people's weakness and fear or desire to be superstitious, was Molech. And Molech is alive and well in America. But Molech insists that the people pass their child through the fire. So, Molech worshippers would light it's a fertility god, so you can imagine the fertility practices. they would make a golden statue, light a fire underneath his legs so that the gold became superheated, and they'd place their child in the hands of the superheated metal statue as a religious practice. Now, I believe many parents are currently worshiping Molech without even knowing it by passing their child through the fire, by exposing their child to things that will harm and will endanger them. I mean that spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually. These things are going to burn marks spiritually and in the soul of these people that will scar them for their lives. Even healed, redeemed people will have these scars upon them that will differentiate them from other people and separate them from our society. Now, I'm therefore talking about abuse survivors, people that have survived physical abuse. Now, clearly about this, parents are not always the ones perpetrating the abuse. But if they're not the ones perpetrating the abuse, where were they when it was happening? Where was the protection? Where was the vigilance? Ultimately, we're responsible in those areas. Okay, these people, in addition to exposure to drugs, exposure to lack of protection, exposure to demonic things, get exposed sexual abuse, or overexposed at a very early age to sexual contact. Physical abuse. Emotional abuse. Mental abuse. Neglect. These things cause changes in development. Now, you would only have to refer to somebody else's video on child development, psychology, abuse, things like that, to uncover that these things are changing how the brain works, these things are changing how the stress responses work, ultimately changing our personalities, changing our ability to have relationships with people, changing our ability to relate to groups, changing our ability to relate to anybody trying to help us. The initial response of the people in the Gerasene region was to chain the Gerasene up, like he's crazy. The initial response of the disciples was, we're scared of this guy. Now, here is the problem. When you see a Gerasene, you'll be tempted to be afraid. You will think to yourself, this person is trying to be offensive. This person is trying to get a rise out of me. This is a person who knows that they are being offensive and doing it on purpose. They're scaring me, they're intimidating me, and therefore I have a right to respond in anger. I have a right to respond by ignoring them. I have a right to respond as if this is a scary monster. Because what Gerasenes become in some ways is monsters. They become someone that is further outside of our understanding of how people should be, and someone who will often, because they didn't have normal development, do a number of things that will frighten or bother or offend you. Now, Jesus, on the other hand, saw through the exterior of this dangerous, monstrous man and saw the child who was being unprotected and being exposed to other people's evil. Now, I think that we Christians have a challenge before us in how we are to relate to Gerasenes. And I'll give you a number of examples of the kind of people I'm talking about. However, When we see these people, we will often say, scary, offensive, get away from me. And what we need to develop is the ability to see the broken, damaged person inside. These people often end up different from the rest of us. These people could be people whose life has exposed them to such evil that they no longer feel comfortable in their own gender. And so they may manifest as something very offensive to us. They may manifest something that is really unpleasant for us as religious people. But the challenge is to see that there is a person in there who's not living to offend you, but who is damaged in ways that we can't understand. Many of the homeless are suffering mental illness, chemical dependency, and of course it is easy to see them and look the other way, get to the other side of the street. They are easy to ignore. People who are chemically dependent, drug users, people who have what we would call mental illnesses, which are often demonic oppression, which are often long-standing issues related to their family or abuse issues. People that are neurodifferent, people who fall on the autism spectrum, or other kinds of neurodifferent, other kinds of ways that brains work. They do not behave in ways we think people should behave, and so we kind of don't make any attempt to understand or know them or help them. I believe that the church needs to begin thinking of Gerasenes as a new culture and a series of microcultures within that new culture, as they are not truly the same, homogeneous. They're truly not homogeneous. We are not going to succeed in trying to engage them with church that has been designed for developmentally normal people. They are not developmentally normal people. You see the pain, and then you see what is broken inside. They are not developmentally normal. They are a different culture that requires addressment as a different culture. I think that as long as we think these people can just be invited into our warm, friendly, middle class, regular people churches, I think that we will be failing to understand them and give them something that they need. I think this is a big problem in general, as the more of a secular society we have, the more we should be perceiving our society in general as a mission field. We should be thinking of reaching American subcultures as reaching foreign countries. We can't really presume that we have cultural commonality with everyone in our society. Virtually all domestic ministry strategies presume the object, the person we wish to evangelize, we wish to present the gospel to, is part of our culture or even wants to be part of our culture. Let me say that again. Virtually all domestic ministry strategies presume the object is part of our culture or wants to be part of our culture. The Gerasenes are not part of mainstream American culture, and they may not want to be. Some may want to, some may not want to. And this is our great error. You remember colonialism? Colonialism was, let me forcibly bring my nation's culture and religion at the same time and push them on you. We have a responsibility to present and incarnate the gospel of Jesus Christ in all areas of our lives. We don't have a responsibility to share or extend North American white culture. We don't actually, that's not, and I think in some cases, the backpack we carry that has all of our North American white middle class culture in it is a weight that is preventing the gospel from reaching parts of America that aren't clicking with America. So we don't need to bring, and we should probably try to stop bringing, a sense that being a Christian, being part of the church, is being like everybody in this subculture, or in this macro culture. I feel that God has shown me these things about the existence of Gerasenes, the need to love them carefully, love them specifically and differently, without an attempt to fix them. See, fix. We are compulsive as human beings trying to fix one another. We're compulsive along the lines that begin with, I'm normal, be more like me. Now, there's certainly a Christian version of that, but it's often be like our culture. I am personally quite burdened and called to incarnate the gospel to Gerasenes wherever I can find them, wherever I can create connection with them. And I believe that the most crucial thing I can do with people that aren't necessarily looking for a church and aren't looking to be evangelized is to incarnate the gospel. That is, to be the gospel in any way I can that is meaningful to them. To fulfill their needs, to give them things that are meaningful to them. Nobody fulfills anybody's needs but God. Let me make that clear. Nobody fulfills anybody's needs but God. My wife is a gift from God, and it is, example, it's because of God that I have the benefit of a wife. I should not place upon my wife the responsibility to fulfill all of my needs. Only God can take that weight from anybody. And we incarnate the gospel in ways that are different than we would for somebody who's already part of our culture. Identifying things that are meaningful to them. God has allowed me to pray with 100 times more people than I've been allowed to preach the gospel to. But it is the incarnating the gospel to these people that has enabled me to create any kind of connection, to try to be and do the things that will speak to them. And I think we're generally raised in American Christianity with religious prejudice. I know that sounds terrible. We're raised and indoctrinated to be a little bit horrified by things that aren't the good, wholesome Christian things we want ourselves to be, we want our neighbors to be. There is a hymn writer and intercessor from the 1800s, I think 1800s, whose name is Fanny something. But she was blind, and she would figure out who to pray for by judging who smelled worst. And I think this is an excellent new axiom or paradigm for beginning to burn our religious prejudices. Because in fact, the ones who need our love the most are the ones that are most offensive in appearance to us. Now, it's one thing to see somebody who's non-threatening and needs some kind of help. There's another thing entirely to see someone who threatens you and respond with, I think they need some help. People that have been in prison and became prison culture and became covered in jailhouse tattoos become people that we are frightened of and feel justified in being frightened of. And they begin to fall in this category as well. Our religious prejudice and fear or disgust of people whose sin or differentness will burn every bridge possible for the gospel. If we show fear, we show disgust. If we have fear, if we have disgust toward the most broken, damaged people, the door to you sharing the gospel or incarnating the gospel to them will be shut forever. If you show disgust or fear, it'll be gone. They have been treated that way for a long, long time. Now, we as Christians need to give them the better thing. I have done some volunteer work in a homework club, helping kids that happen to be children of immigrants who are struggling with English to finish their homework. And I believe that many of these kids are very neglected chronologically due to parents working innumerable amount of hours because of the immigrant situation, how immigrants do not integrate into our society as well as it's a challenge for them. Now these young men, they don't look Gerasene, but they began to test me. So they want attention from a father figure kind of person, I believe. And we're there to incarnate the gospel. And so what they will do is they're used to get attention from male authority figures is what you do is act up. What you do is get them angry so they will yell at you or discipline you. And that's attention of some kind. So they were testing me to see if I was going to be that kind of person who was going to respond in anger and give them negative attention. And so several of them just began to use profanity and sling it at me and call me curse words and stuff. And I could see quite clearly they were saying, I need attention, I need a father figure, I need somebody to, tell me I'm good and, give me some kind of attention and response. And so I couldn't hear. I mean, I could hear, but I didn't hear the cuss words. I heard, I'm lonely and I want some attention and I want, father figure type approval. And when there was a pause in the profanity, I said, thank you. It's very kind of you. And they were confused and bewildered. But this is the thing that is most needed. If all of the male authority figure types will only give you ignoring or yelling, it is unbelievably effective. That there is a strong, masculine, fatherly person who is only gentleness, is only encouragement, is only love. And I'm not that all the time, every single day, but I recognize that to incarnate the gospel to these young men, I need to be present, and I need to be faithful in being there. I need to be the guy that will talk to them and give them encouragement without losing his temper, without reacting to their tests. Those kids really like and trust me. Those kids really like and trust, and they accept help from me, and I just. So this, though, is how the Christian perspective needs to be changed regarding Gerasenes. This may be the first time anybody's talked about this group of people at all. It's the first time you thought about this, but where you have yourself fearing or disgusted or angered by Gerasene behavior, we need to have spiritual ears to hear what the heart is really saying. And the heart was really saying, I just need some positive attention from a father figure. And so it will be different, but the same basic idea, hearing what they're really saying, what the soul is saying, is crucial for having any kind of effect on these people. I foresee Gerasene-focused ministries, Gerasene-focused churches that allow things to happen without the forced involvement of our culture, without trying to normalize them in our cultural terms, but allowing them to become the redeemed version of themselves, and not just, my fear, and I've seen this so many times, is Gerasene is invited into a really normal American middle-class church, and they kind of become a pet. They kind of become somebody you give some attention to once a week. You feel real good about yourself because, we're so open-minded and liberal, and we've got this, so caring, and we got this really different person here. They don't have any peers, and they don't have ministries that suit their needs, and they're just kind of lucky to be around like a pet. And because it's not their culture, and it never will be their culture, I see a future where Gerasene microcultures are approached like foreign cultures, and the church then adapts its strategies accordingly. In Jesus' name.